Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of unprotected talk, borders, language, culture. And here he is, Michael Savage.
And of course, the same song is being written by the greatest songwriter in communist history, Barack Obama, about America. Obama, the greatest bully in the history of the presidency. I'm going to talk about bullying today. At the same time, I'm going to talk about the wit and wisdom of Michael Savage with unprotected talk. Meaning anything you want to talk about, I'll take, unless it's absolutely boring or stupid or whatever. No one's going to screen it, 855-407-282, but I want to talk about bullying. The street thugs, Baltimore, bullying the cops. The ACLU and the Southern Poverty Law Center, bullying Christians. Gays, lesbians, and transgendered, bullying the whole society. Muslims, bullying the West. Obama, bullying the Supreme Court. Illegal aliens in the United States, bullying states, demanding things they're not entitled to. Last month, Breitbart reported about a major transit camp for Muslims coming in from Africa as they make their way into the United Kingdom, the promised land where they can live on welfare for the rest of their lives, deal drugs, stab, rape, murder, whatever they want. And the patsy British, the once proud British who no longer exist, do nothing. So they set up hundreds of tents with porta potties, and they let them live in there. Well, recently, Parisian police cleared the site of these encampments, and they were opposed by who? Who opposed the Parisian police who cleared the site with tents and porta potties for the Muslim Africans who are flooding into Europe? Who do you think joined the radical Muslims who had knives? Communist students joined together in an attempt to oppose the arrival of riot police. I allege, because I know it to be true, that the Islamists, the communists, are one and the same. They have joined forces against the West. The socialist communist bloc has joined the Muslim bloc to overturn everything in the West that is of decency and replace it with chaos. Your communists, your socialists, your Occupy movement are the new threat to your survival. As I sit here, I see it as clearly as possible, and they use bullying tactics. Everyone's afraid of them. They use the courts. They use the newspapers. Right now, it's being reported that Calais in France is a battlefield. Knife-wielding Muslims from Africa are threatening truckers with death if they don't smuggle them into the United Kingdom. Now, why would these Muslim Africans be so desperate as to want to get to England? Do you think they want to work? You think they're going to England to work? They're going to England to live on the dole. Rape, murder, steal, do whatever they want to do. Because they're bullies. And the English have lost their nerve. They have no nation anymore. The same thing is happening here. Every day we read of radical Islamics, radical Muslims, radical Hispanics filing lawsuits, demanding things they're not entitled to. College students with undocumented parents file suit claiming South Carolina denying them scholarships and in-state tuition. You hear this one? And who is filing a lawsuit for them? None other than the criminal Southern Poverty Law Center. The Southern Poverty Law Center is a domestic legal terrorist group, in my estimation. And if there was a true Republican majority, they'd be investigated and closed down as an anti-American front group. That's right, you heard me. Meanwhile, another study coming out of San Francisco, the land of diversity. All we hear about in San Francisco is diversity. You can't walk down the streets without puking. It smells of fecal matter and urine wherever you go. That's what the Democrat socialist machine has done to this beautiful city. They have let the filthy bums crap in the bushes and pee in the streets. And the cops have been rendered powerless in San Francisco by the liberal vermin who are ripping the city off, robbing it blind, all the while using the homeless bums as their street thugs to intimidate the population and keep the police off their backs. To keep the police off the backs of the rotten, corrupt politicians, they run the homeless at you. They let them urinate in the streets. They let them defecate in the bushes. I went there the other day, I almost threw up. But guess what's coming? A new study says San Francisco will be lily white in 25 years. That's right. Mr. and Mrs. Diversity, pay attention. Mr. and Mrs. Progressive, you're full of it. According to a new study by the San Francisco Foundation, the city's policies are rapidly ejecting, guess who? Blacks, Latinos, and Asians, and will become a lily-white island in a heavily diverse region over the next 25 years. Listen to this. The population of African Americans in San Francisco was 13.4% in 1970. Remember that number. 1970, population of African Americans, 13%. That made blacks the second largest ethnic group compared to whites, which was 75% of the population. But by 2000, because of the communist, liberal, socialist thieves who run the city, who have run over the city with illegal aliens, Hispanics mainly, blacks' share had fallen to about 8%. So it went from 13%, okay, in 1970. By 2000, because of the socialist, communist criminals who are flooding the city with illegal aliens from Mexico mainly, black population was run down to 8%. By 2013, blacks have been so driven out of the city, they only make up 6% of the city. Whites fell to 50%, due to Asians moving up to 34% of the city's residents. But as the city becomes more expensive and more elite, Asians are moving out. Soaring housing costs, wages that are lagging well behind the cost of living are driving this change. Only the high wage earners in professional, technical services and finance jobs whose incomes more than doubled in the last 35 years will achieve the economic gains necessary to be able to live in San Francisco in 2040. So the SF Foundation predicts over the next 25 years that the percentage of Asians in San Fran will fall from 34% to 28%. And the Latino, which, by the way, is a phrase I don't use, the right word is Hispanic. Latino is a socialist phrase. So we'll use the word Hispanic. The Hispanic population will fall from 15% to 12%. And so the result will be whites moving back up from 44% to over 58%. Now, what does that mean? Nothing. It means nothing. That's all. But I thought I would read it to you for all of you diverse types who celebrate diversity. 855-472. 82 is the phone number. Today is the wit and wisdom of Michael Savage. I don't know what you want to talk about. I've given you some of the ideas that I want to talk about. Bullying by Muslims, bullying by LGBT thugs, bullying by street thugs against the cops, bullying by vermin with law degrees in the ACLU and SPLC, Obama bullying everybody and everything in his way. You want to talk about any of these topics? Let's go for it. Line number 3, Savage Nation. Go ahead from KSFO. What's on your mind?
Yeah, so listening to news over in Europe, specifically Czech Republic, they're trying to allot that each country is supposed to take, in a time of crisis, a certain amount of these immigrants. The problem is that in a population of 10 million people, they want to allot 20,000 of these to be integrated into the population. Now, how are they going to integrate?
They never do integrate. They never will integrate. They come here to rape, to murder, to steal, and to sell drugs. Everybody knows that. The crime rates are astronomical wherever they are brought in. Let's stop lying to each other. They're not going there to work. They're going there to intimidate everybody. They come from hellholes. Most of them are criminals.
The blanket that's underneath the blanket of racism, but how is it that...
It's racist, none, and I don't even want to use the word. The racists are those foisting them upon white European cultures. They are the real racists. But since the white European culture is ballless and has no guts anymore, they're running all over you. That's the answer. I mean, what do you want me to do? Mince words? Tell you what's not real? They're bullying you into submission. They're bullying you by forcing you to accept them. They never have and never will integrate. So why don't the Czech people stand up and protect their own borders? Why don't the American people protect their borders with Mexico? Because we're afraid, intimidated by the gangster in the White House, the bully, the Al Capone in the White House, Barry Obama, the bully. That's why we're afraid to do anything. The bully in the White House, the thug, the dictator. It's not the will of the people. Most people hate the flood of illegals in America. Why? Are they racist? No, because they see the decimation of their society. They see what it's done to this society. And they're afraid to say a word. They're afraid to do anything because of the criminal thug in the White House and his dangerous sorority. That's all. I have very strong feelings on this. As you can see, I want to talk about the bullying of Obama, the bullying of the LGBT crowd, the bullying of the street thugs against the cops, the bullying of the ACLU and the Southern Poverty Law Center crumbs with their law degrees, but mainly Obama as the number one bully in the world right now. You know, he gets away with it because he's very smooth at it. The other day, he intimidated the Supreme Court in advance of their decision. He threatened them, intimidated them, because he is a bully. He's used it his whole life. He has used bullying his entire life to get where he is, and nobody has ever stopped him. Nobody has ever stopped the bully in chief. WABC in New York, line 5. Line 5, go ahead, please. What's on your mind?
Do you feel there's any hope left for the U.S.?
I thought you asked me the same question yesterday. Weren't you the same caller?
No.
Are you his twin brother, or are you Siamese twins? I heard the same caller from New York.
No.
I'm
not God, so I can't answer the question. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Hey, our Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I trust for wealth insurance, gold and silver. Call 800-BUICOIN. Nobody can get any relief. That's why they're all stoned out of their gourd on prescription drugs. Meanwhile, condemning the crack dealer on the street. They ought to condemn the doctor who gave him the antidepressant. He's a bigger drug dealer than the crack dealer. Play it again. That's all. Oh, by the way, a reindeer in the Bay Area. It's beautiful. Like Irish Spring. They won't report it in the paper, though. It counters the whole myth of, that there may never be rain again. Guess Jerry Brown did a rain dance somewhere in Sacramento. Imagine him naked on the roof of the state capitol praying for rain. Actually, in Jerry Brown's case, I imagine he'd do a rain dance praying there would never be rain, so they continue to gouge the taxpayer and build those speed trains to nowhere and talk about global warming. Meanwhile, the idiot in the White House, the criminal bully in the White House, you're not going to believe this story. I'm not making this up. This could come out of only a mad comic, but it's true. Obama's EPA is targeting greenhouse gas emissions from commercial aircraft. The idiot moron psychopaths, the college girls, will restrict greenhouse gas emissions from commercial jets. The latest in a long line of steps the dumb house has taken to address so-called climate change. Now, if they would begin by limiting greenhouse gas emissions from the gangsters Air Force One, Air Force Two, and Air Force Three, I would say, okay, then there's some validity to it. If Al Capone's personal plane were to, let's say, fly on banana peels or something to that effect, I would say, okay, at least they're not hypocrites. But they're going to restrict greenhouse gas emissions from your jets? How are they going to do that? The so-called EPA, the bullies in the EPA, the idiots in the EPA, will begin crafting standards and expects to formally adopt them early next year. You see, U.S. aircraft account for about 11% of greenhouse gas emissions, the agency said. And so they want to impose restrictions on the aircraft sector. I think they ought to apply it to our fighter jets, frankly, first, because the fighter jets are terrible emitters. I mean, if you've been on an aircraft carrier and watched those FA-18 Hornets take off and land, I mean, you see the flames shooting out of the back of that plane. Do you realize what that's doing to the environment? And while you're at it, you ought to restrict greenhouse gas emissions from guns. I mean, there's probably not a greater greenhouse gas emitter than a gun. Think every time a cop fires a bullet on a target range, every time one of our soldiers or Marines learns how to shoot a rifle, aren't they destroying the environment? Think of that, the waste of energy. And think of what could be done there if only one of the cockamamie crazy lawyers unleashed himself on the courts. This is an example of bullying. Not only bullying, but insane bullies. You know, there used to be an old phrase, the inmates are running the asylum. In this case, they're bullying inmates running the American asylum. These are not just inmates, they're